Good morning, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, YouTube. So you may recall a little while ago we did a video picking up a Caterham from the Severn workshop down near London in Hertfordshire. Well, the engine went back in, it's been upgraded and rebuilt, and everything is done, and it's been running now for a little while. So we have done a few miles in it, or the owner's done a few miles in it, and it's going to be doing a big road trip coming up soon. It's doing a tour around the whole northwest coast of Scotland, about a 500-mile tour. Plus, of course, it's quite a long drive to get up to Scotland as well. So prior to doing that, it's time for a service. So just going to go through a few points. The Caterham's a great example on how to show you things. We're not going to teach you how to suck eggs. We're not going to go into doing an oil change or things like that in too much detail. There are 100 videos out there that do that, but we're just going to go through a basic service on the Caterham and preparing it for its long trip coming up. So first things first, let's get the bonnet off. Where are we going with that? Let's take that out. So the great thing about Caterham is the nose cone comes off with Zeus fasteners. One little thing you don't always think about, if you want to help your oil drain through quicker, just take your oil filler cap off. It just prevents any partial vacuums building up in the engine, allows the air to enter as the oil drains out, and it will always speed up the oil drain just a little bit. That's especially useful on bikes as well. Be aware, if you're working on a bike, although the basic principle of an oil change is the same, one thing that can catch you out, some bikes have two drain plugs, and it is essential to use both, as there'll be an area in the sump which cannot cross drain one to the other, hence the reason for the two plugs. With the Apollo system on this Caterham, it uses about 6.5 litres of oil, which makes life really simple for filling, because this first 5 litre container can just go straight in. Many people over tighten spark plugs, so if they're a bit tight, be very careful, because the last thing in the world you want to do is shear off a spark plug. That's real headache and a whole world of pain you can do without. This plug here is exhibiting an absolutely ideal mixture. It's a light biscuity colour, there's no oily deposits, there's a little bit of carbon around the base, which is normal, and that's a sign of an engine that's running absolutely spot on. This car's just recently been fitted with throttle body fuel injection, so this is the first time I've really seen the plug since that was done, and it appears the map is spot on. It's a good practice to not throw away anything until the job's completed. And the reason for that, if something silly happens, like you've been sent the wrong spark plugs, the last thing you want to do is, having disabled your vehicle, having thrown your old spark plugs away. So always wait till the job's completed and everything's perfect before you throw things away. One of the problems you might come across is there's a rubber insert in a spark plug spanner, if you just put a tiniest drop of oil on the ceramic, almost nothing, and just work it in with your fingers, see it's just enough to coat it. That just means that once the plug's in, you can actually pull the spark plug spanner back out. These plugs have been pre-gapped, it's important to set the gap. And the other thing to consider, this is a crush washer, so when you tighten them in, the last bit feels a bit funny. That's just because that washer's crushing down. Only ever do plugs hand tight, they do not need much force. So now, next job of course, put the coils back on. On a magic hand. Yep. Right, which one's? That's the short one, so that's the front. It's just a bit chunky anyway. The other thing that's very useful to do, as this Caterham is a kit car, is just periodically at each service just go through all the coolant hoses, engine mounts, just check, spanner check everything, because there's always a bit of a chance something could work loose because it is a small, harsh, vibrating, small vehicle, so it's always worth doing a good spanner check. Okay, so the final job we've got to do is to bleed the clutch and the brakes, just putting new fluid in. Brake fluid is what they call hydroscopic, so it absorbs water over time. So periodically you need to change it because its boiling point lowers. On a passenger car, probably every 4 years is fine. On something like this Caterham, which is driven more aggressively, the brakes generate a lot more heat than a typical road car would do under normal conditions, and therefore the boiling point of the fluid is effectively much more important. As the brake fluid absorbs water, that water content lowers its boiling point. So every 2 years or so, or even every year, on a car like this, it's advisable to change the brake fluid. All that involves, I'm doing this cap here. We're going to start in the furthest point from the brakes, which is actually the rear corner there. Just open the bleed nipple, push the pedal down, shut the bleed nipple, repeat. And we repeat that process until completely clean, fresh fluid is coming out. And with 6 or 7 pumps per corner, all this fluid will be flushed through and replaced quite easily. When you account for the lines as well, we're probably going to do about 15 pumps per corner. We should have lovely fresh fluid throughout the whole system. So all we're going to do here is just open the bleed nipple, the brakes get pushed, close the bleed nipple, release. And we're going to do this about 20 times initially. The reservoir is full, and then we'll top the reservoir up and do about another 15 pumps. So, are you ready? Okay, down, up, down, up, down, up, that's 3, down, 4, up, down, 5. Okay, so now about 15 pumps, and that'll take us to our full level and the brake bleed is done. Ready? Down, 1, up, down, 2, up, down, 3, up, down, 15, up, fully closed, locked off. Pop the tube off, starting at the top like that. And that minimises the amount spilt rather than just pulling it off and having fluid go over it, because you don't want to get fluid on the discs and pads. So just a little tug to make sure that's shut. Wipe off the fluid from around the brake nipple area. And we just replace our rubber cap. Just like so. And that's the brakes with fresh fluid. One of the things that many people do, including experienced mechanics, which is a mistake, is to top up their brake fluid between pad changes or between fluid changes. Now this level, between the full on here and the lowest part on the reservoir where minimum is, actually accounts for pad wear. So when your brake pads wear, that level will drop. It's not necessary to top that up, because that's actually telling you something. If you get down to the minimum mark, if there's no sign of any leaks, then the odds are your pads are ready for replacement. If you've topped it up in the meantime, when you push the pistons back in the caliper, that level is going to become too high, and it can actually hydrolock the system and prevent you getting the calipers back in, and the pistons back into the calipers, or if you've got the top off, it will overflow and damage all the paintwork. So actually, it's a complete myth, and you should not top your brake fluid up between pad changes. If you like these videos, hit the like and subscribe button, and we'll see you soon.